Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Stephen Gourley, Director of the StellarXplorers Program Office. Let me be the first to welcome you to the award ceremony for the StellarXplorers VII National Finals. Tonight is the culmination of many months of hard work by students, teachers, youth counselors, and mentors. And this season, a special shout out to the parents in this stay-at-home COVID environment. We are pleased to recognize the efforts of the top 10 performing teams out of the 211 that registered to compete this season. Each of these teams has been successful over the course of 4 challenging rounds of qualification and a grueling day and a half of finals this past weekend. Each of you should be proud of what you have accomplished to get to this point, and we know we in the program office are proud of you. This continues to be an exciting time in the space business. I say that every year, and every year it becomes even more expansive, competitive, and challenging than the last. Multiple commercial programs are underway or proposed. Remote sensing, radar imaging, communications, broadband access, spacecraft servicing, and small and heavy launch. On the civil side, NASA's Lunar Gateway, Mars colonies, asteroid sampling, and planetary exploration contribute to scientific aspects of space. The only limit? Imagination. Once only the purview of science fiction. And yet, with all that comes risks and threats, not unlike the proliferation of commercial activities on the oceans in the centuries past. 4 countries to date have demonstrated anti-satellite capability, even as space has become even more entrenched and foundational to our way of life. There are plenty of challenges, not only technical, but political and regulatory. Many of you have expressed interest in aerospace careers. We look to you to rise to these opportunities, just as you have the challenges of StellarXplorers, and tackle each and solve these impediments head on. Our finalists have been hard at work this past day and a half. For the rest of our audience, I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Tim Brock, the StellarXplorers competition lead, to give you an overview of the competition and introduce our 10 finalist teams. Tim?
Good evening. I am Tim Brock, Director of Competition for the StellarXplorer Program Office. I want to welcome you to this brief summary of what the teams have been going through for the last 2 days. And we will also talk and introduce you to our teams. First of all, what have we had them do? Well, on Friday, they had to solve a very difficult scenario task and build a mission briefing. And they had only 8 hours to do that. And I will show you, it was quite a task. Earlier today, they had to give a 13-minute mission briefing to our staff. And they had to take a 10-question academic quiz based on the material we studied during the year. We always give the team a place to go. And for this round, we went to the moon. Specifically, we had the team work on a project to help America get back to the moon, and that program is called Artemis. So how are we going to the moon? Well, the objective is to first get the first woman and the next man to the moon by the mid-2020s. To do that, you need a set of equipment. First, you need a really big rocket to get to the moon. And to do that, we're building the Space Launch System, or SLS. It's a rocket bigger than the Saturn V, and it'll get us on the road to the moon. At the top of that rocket, there'll be a capsule called Orion. Orion is about 40% bigger than the old Apollo capsule and is capable of supporting 6 astronauts for an extended period of time. NASA is turning to our commercial partners to build a lander to go to the moon. This is a reusable lander that would take the astronauts from the surface of the moon back up into orbit. And in orbit, they would meet the newest element of the process, that's the gateway. The Lunar Gateway is an orbiting space station that will stay permanently around the moon The Orion capsule would mate with the station. The astronauts would transfer from Orion to the lunar lander, and then they would separate and land on the moon. And when their mission on the moon was complete, they would go back, link up with the gateway, get back in Orion, and fly back to the Earth. This is a new effort for us, placing people in deep space for long periods of time. That has created a new hazard, solar radiation. The sun puts out some pretty extreme radiation that fortunately here on Earth we're protected by the Earth's magnetic field, which causes the radiation to go around the Earth. Even the astronauts on board the International Space Station have some protection from this radiation. But on the moon or in the gateway, they will not have any protection. So we need to find a way to get information to the team about this radiation so they can take some preventative action, like getting in hardened modules on board this gateway. NASA will be launching a new monitoring satellite that will watch the sun, called the Space Weather Follow-On, SWFO. That has the information that we need to warn the astronauts. So we must get this warning data from WSFO to the gateway. That was a task that was given to the teams yesterday. They had to build and launch a satellite to relay data from SWFO to the gateway. Well, how do they do that? Well, here was the task they were given. They had to pick from one of 6 transmitters that were available to send information to the gateway. They had to pick one of 6 ground transmitters that would send information to a station on the ground. They had to pick one of 6 solar sensors that would monitor the sun and send the information it produced to the ground station. They had to pick one of 4 attitude control systems that would provide a stable platform for the satellite. They had to pick one out of 4 flight computers that would basically be the brains of the satellite. They had to pick one of 3 flight batteries that would provide power to the satellite when it was on the dark side of the Earth. That's over 10,000 different equipment combinations. Quite a task. Oh, by the way, they also had to figure out how much fuel to load onto the satellite, and they had to pick an orbit for the satellite, and they had to pick a launch vehicle for the satellite. And they had to write a mission briefing. So you can see our teams had quite an amount of work to do yesterday, and they did a very good job. So with that, let's talk about who are these teams. You can see they're from a broad spectrum across the country, East Coast, in the center of the country, and on the West Coast. First of all, Team 003, the Aurora Composite Squadron Civil Air Patrol from Portland, Oregon. They are the Africanized killer bees. Team 022, North Edmonds High School Air Force Junior ROTC Team number 1 from Edmond, Oklahoma. They are the Pathfinders to the Stars. Team 047, Buena Park High School Air Force Junior ROTC Team number 1 from Buena Park, California. They are Circinus. Also from Buena Park is Air Force Junior ROTC Team 2. They are SSADD people. Team number 057, McMichael High School Air Force Junior ROTC Team number 1 from Madonin, North Carolina. They are the Flying Phoenix. From 121, the Science Academy STEM Magnet Program, Team number 1 from North Hollywood, California. They are the Tardigrades. Team 136, Francis Tuttle Technology Center, Team number 2 from Oklahoma City. They are the Purple Ducks. Team 145, North Quincy High School Air Force Junior ROTC from Quincy, Massachusetts. They are the Beretus Project. Team 159, Palos Verdes Peninsula High School, team number 1 from Rolling Hills Estate, California. They are Panther team number 1. And finally, team 199, Scripps Ranch High School, Air Force Junior ROTC, team number 3 from San Diego, California. They are team Minerva. I'm pleased to tell you that all teams have completed all 3 phases of the competition. We have scored their solutions, and we are ready to announce the national champions later this evening.
AFA is extremely proud of our Stellar Explorers program and all it's done in the past 12 months to adapt and thrive during these challenging times. Last year, we were forced to cancel our in-person national finals due to rising coronavirus cases. Our Stellar Explorers program office this year has implemented its Season 7 National Finals competition to a virtual event held during this weekend. The Stellar Explorers Season 7 presented its own set of challenges for the teams, with schools and organizations across the country in virtual or hybrid models of instruction. Stellar Explorers recognized that modification of several standing rules was necessary to meet the needs of teams that could not gather together for competition rounds. Even with these unprecedented challenges, Stellar Explorers registered 211 teams from across the United States and 2 overseas locations for its 7th season, which was down only 2% from Season 6. The virtual nature of the program's format facilitated participation and was attractive to organizations who were not able to congregate for participation in other events. The support of Stellar Explorers sponsors has been especially important over the past year for their generous investment in our nation's future that has allowed us to expand AFA's Stellar Explorers program from its humble beginnings in 2015 to a program of exceptional quality, unique among our nation's STEM programs. New to the program is our Stellar Camp, which will be premiering this summer. Our special thanks goes to Stellar Explorers' presenting sponsor, Lockheed Martin Space Systems, and our Stellar Diamond sponsor, the Air Force STEM program. With their support, we have achieved our goals of increasing STEM participation among students of all backgrounds, races, and gender. With their continued involvement, we will accelerate the growth of the program in a breadth and depth, thereby inspiring and motivating a growing number of students towards STEM education and careers. We're also grateful for the support provided by our Stellar Platinum sponsor, L3 Harris, as well as our educational alliance with Space Center Houston and Coyote Enterprises. Not only have their financial contributions helped us grow and sustain the dynamic program, but their in-kind contributions have enriched and enhanced the students' experience. A special thanks goes out to our competition partner, Analytical Graphics Incorporated. AGI was instrumental to launching Stellar Explorers, and it continues to be a critical element of the program as our technical contributor. In addition, we thank the AFA volunteers and leaders nationwide who have joined us as we seek to inspire more young men and women to pursue education and careers in aerospace engineering and other STEM-related fields. The 7th season of Stellar Explorers was an unprecedented one, and our nearly 200 coaches and mentors spent countless hours guiding students throughout this competition. Many coaches found new and innovative ways to guide their teams during these unusual times, and we salute them and the parents as well. These Stellar Explorer finalists wouldn't be here without you. AFA thanks you for your ongoing support of our program and of this next generation of STEM leaders. And now it's a distinct honor to introduce our guest speaker this evening, Mr. Norman Augustine. Mr. Augustine served as Undersecretary of the Army and Acting Secretary of the Army, and is the former Chairman and CEO of Lockheed Martin. He has served as Chairman and Principal Officer of the American Red Cross, Chairman of the Association of the U.S. Army, Chairman of Aerospace Industries Association, and Chairman of the Defense Science Board. Recently, Mr. Augustine graciously agreed to be the chairman of our StellarXplorers Advisory Board. It's an honor to have the support of someone of his stature and reputation for our StellarXplorer program. His global reputation as a visionary leader in science, technology, and space are an inspiration for our growing national program. Mr. Augustine.
Good afternoon, and I'm mighty honored to have been asked to be a part of this celebration today. I want to congratulate all the finalists in this contest. You have a great deal to be proud. There were many teams that launched and only a few that reached apogee, and that was no small feat. I also want to congratulate the team directors, the sponsors, the parents, and certainly the Air Force Association for making this event possible. What you have demonstrated as participants are many of the qualities that are important in life. Imagination, creativity, determination, stick-to-itiveness, and certainly a great potential. And when I mention great potential, I have to think of that great philosopher, Linus, the cartoon, who, when he spoke of great potential, he said that one of the greatest burdens a person can bear is to have it said of them that they have great potential. And indeed, you have great potential. People expect a lot of you, not only because of this contest, but the qualities that you exhibited in this contest are the same qualities you'll exhibit throughout life that really will make a person have great potential. I would like to speak particularly to the StellarXplorers in my remarks. And let me begin with the beginning of rocketry. That goes back 900 years. It started in China with solid rockets, and they were used mostly for fireworks and for warfare. But it was many years after that. In fact, it was only 9 years before I was born when the first liquid rocket was flown that had all the advantages of greater energy and much greater controllability. The first rocket was flown by Robert Goddard at his aunt's cabbage patch in Massachusetts, and it reached the astonishing altitude of 41 feet. And by my calculation, 41 feet is about 1/10 the height of the Apollo rocket. So Goddard's rocket reached 41 feet up, 1/10 the height of the Apollo rocket, which is while the Apollo rocket was still standing on the launch pad at Cape Canaveral. We've come a long way over the years. The first space shuttle that carried the large orange fuel tank that propelled it into orbit. I calculated that if that space shuttle were placed on its side, and the fuel tank on its side, that the Wright brothers' famous flight could have taken place entirely inside of the fuel tank. The first model airplane I ever worked on was made of sticks of balsa. It was wrapped with tissue paper for skin, and it was powered with a single rubber band. And I'm going to make a confession now that as a rocket scientist, which I really am, I don't like to let a lot of people know, but I'll share with you that on that first airplane I built, I put the wings on backwards. I put the sharp edge in front and the round edge in back. That made sense to me, and it's my story and I'm sticking with it, that if you want to cut through the air, you want to have the sharp edge in front, like a knife. Turns out that's not the right answer, and my airplane clearly proved that it was not the right answer. On the other hand, years later, I was working on hypersonic flight, and in hypersonic flight, you do want the sharp edge in front and the blunt edge on back, so I was just way ahead of my time. When I was in college, I joined the American Rocket Society. That was a group of forward-thinking people who talked about putting humans on the moon. This was back in the day when if someone wanted to describe an impossible undertaking, something really difficult, they would say, you could no more do that than fly to the moon. And it was only a few years after that that I was working with a group of people to help fly to the moon. And engineers and scientists love impossible tasks, and that's one of the things that make them such great careers. Actually, though, I started out to be a forest ranger, but there were a series of random events that occurred that caused me to wind up in aviation and space. And there were some important lessons from that, and I'd like to share them with you. They come in two halves. The first half is that you need to have some idea where you want to end up before you begin. And just as an example, if you want to be a surgeon, it's probably a good idea to go to medical school rather than business school. That's the first half. The second half is that along the way through your careers, there will be a lot of unexpected events. There will be opportunities that suddenly appear. There will be forks in the road. And it's very important, as my friend Dan Tellep used to say, who ran Lockheed. He used to say that when opportunity knocks, try to answer the door. And that was very good advice for almost anything that one does. Turns out you can't plan all the details of a career. Sometimes you have to leave your comfort zone to pursue new opportunities. The things you've learned in your project the last few months will serve you very well in whatever career you may pursue. You learned about teamwork and leadership and competing and about making choices. And your rocketry project was all about making choices, trading different features of a rocket that you would want to have to accomplish a given mission. You can't have everything. You have to make exchanges. And it turns out that nature is a very fair judge. Most of the things we do in life are judged by other humans who have their biases, some intentional, mostly not intentional, but they do have their biases, whereas Mother Nature is fair, absolutely fair. On the other hand, Mother Nature is very unforgiving. You can't cut corners, you can't try to talk your way out of problems, you get no do-overs, you get no recalls like in Detroit, and no mulligans like in golf. As an example, one of the early missions to Venus was conducted by a company I didn't work for, but a very fine company. The rocket and the payload they designed to go to Venus had thousands of lines of software code. And in those lines of software code, there was one symbol, call it a hyphen, that inadvertently had been omitted. And it wasn't found during the testing because it was in a backup line of code that no one ever expected to be used in space, except in some unusual circumstance. Well, the rocket was launched to Venus, and sure enough, the spacecraft quickly got into the backup mode. Turned out the hyphen was missing, and the spacecraft failed. That's how unforgiving the spacecraft business is. There's, on the other hand, the first rocket I ever worked on that I had a major role in, frankly, a responsibility, was a failure. The flight time was 200 milliseconds before it blew up. But you can recover, as did my career, from almost any mistake, except the one mistake you can't recover from is an ethical error, or an error of character. The very first week I was in graduate school in aeronautical engineering, the Sputnik was launched. And there's nothing wrong with being lucky in terms of suddenly the space age opened. And I was able to take on a responsibility at a very early age, and that's true of working in engineering and science, because almost everything you do is being done for the first time. And if it's being done for the first time, that means that somebody who's 23 years old has as much experience doing it as somebody who's 63 years old. And so you do have great opportunities. And I got to play a tiny role. That's not modesty, that's truth. I played a tiny role in putting 12 people on the moon who turned out to be my friends over the years. Astronauts are a special bunch. I think of a case when the part of a company I was responsible for at Martin Marietta, we had built the backpack that the astronauts were to use to fly around untethered in space as human satellites, flying 24,000 miles an hour around the Earth. And before we were to launch the first person to use our backpack, I was visiting with the astronaut just prior to the launch, and half jokingly I said to him, don't get too carried away with the thrusters on the backpack. I said, I don't want to be responsible for the company that leads to the first human landing on the sun. And he immediately responded, he said, don't worry, I'll land at night. Astronauts are quite a bunch. Well, things do change very quickly in science and engineering. One more reason why it's so exciting. The first Mars transfer orbit I ever calculated was used as my computer was 3 sticks of wood and 2 pieces of glass. It was called a slide rule. And since that time, you think over the 50 years, we can now put 10 million times as many transistors on a chip as we could 50 years ago. We can analyze a human genome for 10,000 times less cost than 13 years ago. And it was just 13 years ago that you couldn't buy an iPhone. There were none to be had, and yet today, half the people on Earth, 3.5 billion people, have an iPhone. A year and a half ago, there were no vaccines for COVID. Now there are several. And in fact, they've been injected in the arms of some 170 million Americans. And you are going to live and work in a golden age of science and technology that will affect almost any field you choose to pursue. And this golden age includes such things as microbiology, digital engineering, digital electronics, advanced materials, artificial intelligence, robotics, automation, and on goes the list. And you're going to get to work on problems of very great importance to the entire world, to our country. There's the challenge of producing clean, affordable, sustainable energy. They're within the topic of the environmental threats that we face. There's the problem that we're still adding pollutants to the atmosphere. And to stop adding pollutants will be part of the answer, but we very likely will also have to develop ways to take pollutants out of the atmosphere, carbon capture, atmospheric carbon capture. And as we continue to suffer from the challenges of climate change, it's going to make fresh water more difficult to obtain in many parts of the world, so that affordable desalination of seawater into fresh water will be another important challenge. Rebuilding infrastructure. In our country alone, we've got thousands of bridges that are considered to be substandard. There's still a matter of curing cancer and heart disease and preventing future pandemics. There are challenges in national security and homeland security. There's also a challenge where we could save 30,000 lives a year in America alone by stopping automobile accidents that are otherwise attributable to the driver. And that, in fact, about 90% of the accidents are due to human failure. And perhaps we could replace the driver in the automobile's driver's seat. And I think we'll see that before too many more years. Then there's a matter of creating quality jobs. 2 Nobel Prizes have shown that up to 85% of the growth in America's GDP is due to advancements in just 2 fields, science and technology. And I calculated that for every percentage point you add to the GDP, you add about 0.6 of a percentage point to jobs, so you're creating jobs. Then there's a matter of winning the races that we're in with China. So there will be plenty to do that's very important for people who are interested in science and technology. And I'll grant you that getting a degree in those fields is not easy. Along the way in your careers, you'll have failures. I certainly did. But you can learn from those failures and then move on to the next challenge. The big challenges, the really big challenges I see ahead in the space arena, rocketry. The first is space tourism. I don't mean just up and down stuff like we do today. I mean going into orbit, flying around the Earth for a day or two, getting motion sickness like most of the flyers do. And then another big challenge I see that I think will happen, of course, is a permanent station on the moon that people, particularly wealthy people, will be able to visit as a tourist. We'll see humans on Mars in your lifetime. The only question is what language they will speak. And then if you want the really big question, that would have to be, is there anyone else out there? That could really be the ultimate question to be answered. In closing, I would just note that My technical background has opened a lot of doors for me and given me an opportunity to do a lot of things. I've traveled to 130 countries. I've stood on the North and South Pole. Incidentally, I played what we think is the first baseball game ever played at the North Pole. And we arranged it so that the pitcher's mound and home plate were right such that the pole was in the center of the two. And so our pitcher's fastball was so slow, it took 12 hours to get from the pitcher's mound to home plate. Think about that one for a minute. Well, I want to close by congratulating you on what you've accomplished and even more importantly on what you will accomplish in life. I want to wish you the very greatest success in your careers, whatever they may be, but never forget, to infinity and beyond.
What a fabulous competition. You students are tremendous and so creative. You all have a bright future ahead of you, truly. It was a great pleasure to be a part of this exciting competition. On behalf of the Secretary of the Air Force, where this competition originated, I want to thank the Air Force Association for this amazing competition. And I'd also like to thank all the corporate sponsors. Most of all, I'd like to thank the student mentors for volunteering their time and the students, the future of our great space nation. You never cease to amaze me. If you were not virtual, here's where I would pause for a big round of applause for this super competition and all those who contributed. But for now, we'll remain virtual. Instead, without delay, we are going straight to announcing the winners. The third place team will receive a 10-inch crystal trophy for prominent display in an appropriate spot at your high school. Each student member of the team will receive a $1,000 educational grant, courtesy of the Department of the Air Force STEM program. The third place team is from San Diego, California, Team Minerva, Scripps Ranch High School, Air Force Junior ROTC. The second place team will receive a 12-inch crystal trophy for display. Each student member of the team will receive a $2,000 educational grant, courtesy of the Department of the Air Force STEM program. The second place team is from Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, Purple Ducks, Francis Tuttle Technology Center. And now I am very pleased to recognize the 2021 national champions of the StellarXplorers competition for season 7. The national champion team will receive a 14-inch crystal trophy. Each student member of the team will receive a $3,000 educational grant, courtesy of the Department of the Air Force STEM program. The national champions of StellarXplorers 7 are from Portland, Oregon, Africanized Killer Bees, Aurora Composite Squadron Cap.
Thank you, Dr. Welsh, for announcing our winning teams. Congratulations to our new national champions. So well deserved. Another great finish to another great season, especially in the face of the COVID pandemic. I especially want to thank all of the students, team directors, mentors, and parents of all the teams participating this season for your hard work. You make this competition come alive. And let me add my thanks to our sponsors, without whom none of this is possible. There wouldn't be a National High School Space Challenge without your help. We appreciate your support this past season and your contributions to this virtual national finals. We're looking forward to a long-lasting and growing partnership in the future. The generosity of our sponsors, both this past season and in the coming years, is allowing AFA to meet one of its long-term standing objectives for StellarXplorers. We have recently brought on board 2 new faces, Mr. Zachary Shelton and Ms. Julie Demyanovich, to serve as the full-time StellarXplorers cadre of the AFA STEM Program Office in Arlington, Virginia. Zach, Julie, and Alex, our long-term liaison to the national staff, will lead the continued execution and accelerated growth of StellarXplorers 8 and beyond. It's been my honor to serve as the program director this last 6 years. And yet I cannot thank enough the real people who made the program possible and so successful. The StellarXplorers program office, comprised predominantly of volunteers, donated their expertise and a significant amount of their time. Buck, Tim, Bill, Soretta, Rich. Normally, at our in-person banquet, I would ask you to stand and be recognized. But somehow, standing by yourself in your study, well, just not the same, is it? Nonetheless, please know that your efforts have been and are appreciated. Last, but not least, Zach, Julie, and Alex want everyone to know registration for the new season, StellarXplorers 8, opens next week. We look forward to your participation once again. And I have to ask, did you feel challenged this past season? Well, you ain't seen nothing yet. Thank you all for attending this awards ceremony. Please, stay safe out there and have a good night.